In the last video help, we discussed basic usage of some of the buttons on the screen, and we talked a little bit about the popovers. In this video, what I'm going to do is introduce you to how the records are mastered and used. This is actually data which creates what is called a primary record. The primary record basically means that I can have my own personal record, and if I want to have somebody or a family member create another record so they're not using my data, which is related to all the popovers here. In other words, these popovers in any screens that are in the navigator are related basically to this user. So if I use any of these and add data to them, I'm adding data to my record. If I want to create a new record, what I would do is come over to the do action, or I could start a new record if there's no other users in the accounts. But if I'm going to go to the next record, I'm going to say go to the next record. And as you'll see here, I've created a basic default screen. The ID number now is number 2 instead of number 1. And you would add your name here, and the date that you created the record would automatically be put in here. Then you can select your own photo, which indicates who this record belongs to. Then you have the access to your owner's notes so that you can go ahead and put anything you want in there, notes about your records. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse the travel here, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go to the first record. The first record is the one I was using. Now what I want to point out is, if I'm using my primary record, and then I'm using popovers, I'm creating records that are attached to this particular record and ID number 1. So if you go to a different screen or you see ID number 1 pictured in there, then that account or that user information belongs to this primary record. What happens if you go to your own or your other records and create a new record, it should also show that data. For example, if I go over to daily activity, you'll see that this information that is in this scrolling area is all records that are tied to or part of this particular record. If I go over to the next, like if I go up to the do action and go to next record, okay, next record, you can see that it's nothing here. And if I go over and go to the same activity, you'll see it's blank. So what you're basically seeing here is that the primary record was set up, and the next record and all of these different things here are all blank because they're created as you go. So these are all tied to this particular user. So let's go ahead and click off of it and go back to the primary record for my records. And I would do that by going to the first record. You can also use a find if you want to in the do action, if you want to look for other people's records. Say there's many records that you may have that you're using family members and friends in the same app for data input. You can say start a find, and what it'll do is it'll empty the fields and put a blank, and then it says a little magnifying glass. You can do can't do in a picture, but you can go ahead and take phrases or words that are in the notes and find everybody that has the same words or phrase, and it would bring everything up. The auto find up here means basically you can use this field to go search on. For example, if I put in number 1, I want to go to my primary record. If I hit do action and perform find, it's going to fill in the fields with my data. But I want to point out that you can have an ID up here or not have an ID, and in different screens where they have like a portal record where you're looking up specific information for all the records in the database, you could create don't put an ID in, or maybe put an ID in if you want to see everything that's related to that particular record with that owner ID in it. But you can use additional things, like you can go ahead and put a name in there and it'll go find that record. Now, if you have an error, and for example, if you just put some blah in there and then you try to do the find without this ID, what it's going to do is it's going to produce an error. And I'll show you because it's not real information. So I'm going to say perform the find. And what it gives you is a dialogue like this: that record must match something in the find criteria. Not easy to say today. But it has to have something in there that matches a record. So what I will do is I'll go back and say modify what I put in there. And I'm going to show you how fluent it is. I'm going to put the first 2 letters of my name, which are probably not much to really look for it, right? Well, watch this. I'll say perform the find, and it actually found me. So you do not have to have all the data in, say, like a name. I could have put in CLE, and if there's no other Clement in there or nothing, nobody has anything with CLE, it'll bring up that record. If there are several people that have that same name and different first names, it'll bring up all those records in selection. What does that mean when I say records in selection? Records in selection are related to how many records are in the actual database that are all the people. Say, for example, all the different users. For example, if I come over here and I navigate and I go to the Daily Manager and I look in here and I say show all records, show all records, there we go. It adds another user to this area. This is the user manager list. So all the different users that we have in the application have their own record ID and their name and date that they were created. And if you have a picture in there, you can bring it up and you can see that this is the person in that account. So if I'm working my way down through any list view, I always should look over to make sure there may be a button over there that adds additional information. Now the edit over here allows me to go in and edit that record or edit this record. Or I can navigate back to that same screen by clicking over here and saying the Daily Manager main, and that would bring me back to this person or the main screen or the last person that was shown on the screen in a selection. So it's got a memory that where it always knows to come back to the record that was last accessed. Okay, so I'm going to cut off right here, and then we're going to come back in the next video, and what we're going to do is start working our way down through the popovers and the related screens that are in this listing that we're going to be using. So let's go to the next video help, and we'll go ahead and watch that video and learn some more.